Can Scott Frost outdevelop the big dogs in the Big 12? Or can he just outdog the big dogs in the Big 12?
You are Locked On UCF, your daily podcast on the UCF Knights, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome on into Locked On UCF, your daily UCF podcast. I'm your host, Mike G. Turn us up, turn us on, and we'll turn it out. I'm here with my good friend, Andrew Gluchov, purveyor of all things UCF sports, to talk a little UCF football on today's show. We're talking development versus stars. What does Scott Frost have to do to get this team up in line with the top teams in the Big 12? We'll give a fall camp update, give some thoughts on some things that Scott Frost had said on a recent Jim Rome interview. And we'll also talk about Myles Montgomery, the man who said, don't forget about me. I'm here. Jaden Nixon isn't going to walk in and take my snaps. But, Andrew, before we get started, a couple of housekeeping notes. Locked On UCF is growing. Part of that growth is we want to hear from you. So do us a favor. In the comment section after this video, if you have questions for us, we are going to select 5 questions every single week and answer those questions right here on Locked On UCF. So hit that comment section. Let us know what you want answered, and Andrew and I will do our best to answer your questions. Also want to thank Stephen Leonard for his contributions to our last show. He does extremely good work. So subscribe to his Substack. He's not hard to find. I'll give you the address there in the comments after the video as well. But let's jump in. Development versus stars. In today's college football, development is super important, but it seems like everybody's reaching for stars. Andrew, talk to me, man. I feel, and I've said very strongly that I think that Scott Frost in these first 2 years is going to have to be very, very skillful about showing that he's a guy who can take a kid. This is something we heard from Dante Carr in his interview. He said, look, man, they were honest with me and told me I'm probably not a starting quarterback right now. Here is their plan to get me there, though. And that was an effective message for him. He felt like it was honest. They weren't trying to sell him a bill of goods. They just said, look, man, we can get you there, and we want you to be a quarterback. What do you think about development versus stars? If you can't develop, you're just reaching for the highest rated guy on the board. But if you can develop, you're maybe analyzing kids a little bit more meticulously to find those diamonds in the rough that could be 3 stars that play like 5 stars.
Well, I mean, we've talked about stars, and I said it then, I'll say it now. I find stars to be an overrated statistic, a measuring stick. It's subjective. What makes a 4-star, what makes a 5-star, and why do star ratings change based on where a guy commits? This is not new. So I don't take the star part very seriously. However, this is where it falls to the coaching staff and in their scouting and recruiting is you got to look for those diamonds. Obviously a 2-star guy is not going to be heavily recruited, but you can find 2-star guys that turn into NFL talents, like a la Richie Grant, who came in under the radar and ended up he's playing in the NFL. 3-star, Blake Bortles was a 3-star guy who was barely recruited as a quarterback, ended up being the number 3 guy in the NFL draft.
Yeah,
it's all about cultivating what's there. The stars just kind of give you a starting point, but that doesn't mean that's where it ends. How many 5-star busts have we seen? We've seen countless number of 5-star busts or 4-star busts, but you see 2 or 3-star guys. Heck, there's an award for walk-ons who end up making it big, and we've seen that many times over the years, where a guy who just kind of falls through the cracks or under the radar gets a chance and rises up. Those are the situations that the coaching staff needs to cultivate. Development is definitely key. You can have the number 1 recruiting class, Texas A&M, and not generate anything because you're not developing the talent that you're bringing in. It ends up becoming, especially nowadays, let's remember we're in a mercenary world right now in college football, college sports in general. It's a mercenary thing. Players are looking for compensation. They want, fair value worth. And it's going to be, your dollars can only stretch so far. So that actually makes it even more important to find those guys who maybe fly under the radar a little bit, that are more, you can develop them because they fit your system, they fit your skill set that you're looking for, and you can, bring that out and then utilize the dollars to retain them. And you and I have talked about that, about using your resources for roster retention more so than going out into the portal and finding, guys to fill in holes. Again, you got to start somewhere. It's starting in 2026 with this class. It's the first one under Scott Frost. So, 26 is going to lead into 27. And then the guys you can hold on to, you can retain by year 2, year 3, they're going to become your starters. And then you have that pipeline that's going. That's why they usually say coaches get 3 years. Obviously, it's a little bit different now because of the way the system's changed. But traditionally, coaches get 3 years to build up the talent that they need based on the styles that they use, versus just kind of plugging holes and just, making the best of it.
Yeah, look, the timeline is certainly shorter now with the advent of the portal. Scott Frost used the word mercenaries himself a couple of interviews in describing some of these guys jumping from program to program. And he characterized it by saying, man, we got so many new guys. I got guys sitting in meeting rooms next to each other, and they don't even know each other's names. They've been here a couple months. So it is tough to build culture and synergy, when guys don't even know who the guy next to them is. And you've got to find a way. You can't lean on that as an excuse. He knows he's got to find a way to close that gap. Before we get to the break, I do want to talk about some of Scott Frost's recent comments in this regard. He joined the Jim Rome show, and he had this to say. He said, I think a lot of coaches that take on a new program are going to be faced with roster turnover. You're going to have to rebuild your whole team in a lot of ways. That's a challenge and not a lot of fun. He says, not a lot of fun. But in some other ways, you can go get the guys that you want and rebuild the team the way you want to quicker. So we've been putting a lot of work into making sure we take a group of individuals and try to turn them into a team, and seeing how fast we can grow up and become a cohesive unit. And the guys have been working hard and excited to get an opportunity to prove ourselves. Scott Frost on building team culture. Some important things that he said there about the guys are excited about the opportunity to prove themselves this year. And there are a lot of people writing UCF off, Andrew. They think that UCF is barely going to be a 4-win team again. And I just think with better coaching, that's going to be worth 2 wins on this schedule. 4 wins last year? Give me a break. They're going to be better than 4 wins.
There's no unwinnable game. Now, there are going to be some games that are going to be tough. Baylor, Kansas State.
Sure.
But there's no and Texas Tech, there's no truly unwinnable games on there. We just saw we saw the coaches poll come out. Arizona State was the top ranked team. I believe it was number 11. You had, I think it was 5 or 6 Big 12 teams in there. A bunch of them were just kind of backloaded into the bottom end of the top 25. But it just shows that, it's a good conference. It's a strong conference, but there's really no lead dog. The Arizona State, ranking there's some recency bias there, but they lost their best running back, who was the heart and soul of their team, Cam Scadaboo. Whether Sam Levitt is able to take that next step, it was this lightning in the bottle. UCF knows all about lightning in the bottle with Scott Frost in 2017. It was just the right things came together at the right time and magic happened. Can Arizona State repeat that, or was that magic in the of the moment? Who's to say? We won't know until the games start playing. But Scott Frost makes a valid comment about the huge turnover of the team. Look what happened when Deion Sanders went to Colorado, basically rebuilt the entire team. Former UCF assistant G.J. Kinney did the same thing at Texas State. That one gets often forgotten about because it happened during the same time as Colorado. They had to rebuild their entire roster and had a huge amount of portal transfers in. UCF's no different this year. I think this is going to be the norm. West Virginia too. This will be the norm, going forward. When you have a head coach leave, you're going to, and because it opens the door for players to leave, they're going to, because the system's going to be different. The situation's going to be different. There's no penalty to leave at that point. It may be after the portal is closed, but they can still leave. They get that special exception to enter the portal because of the coaching change. So you're going to see guys jump ship. It's going to happen. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's definitely going to happen. Look, it's going to be something that every coach has to adapt to. I like that Scott Frost understands that, but he's not using that as a crutch. And that's why I want people to understand. He's not making excuses. As a matter of fact, I've heard very little excuses come out of his mouth since he's gotten here. He's trying to figure out how to win as much as he can now, understanding there are certain parts of the team that he has to rebuild, but not using that rebuild as an excuse for not getting the max out of his team now. I love this attitude coming in. I think that his players are going to, take to that, and they're going to think, look, we have a coach, because when you come into a new job and you talk too much about rebuilding as you get closer to the season, it sends a message to your team that you don't think they're good enough. And I like that he's not talking about, like, you know what I mean? Where it's like, oh, we got to recruit. We got to do, okay, recruiting, that's a message for February and in January. But once you get into spring ball, you got the guys, right? So sure, recruit your butt off, but keep the focus on the guys that are here now and instill a belief in them that you can win games now.
Yeah, and he did that from day one.
Yeah,
when he came in, he goes, I'm going to work with the guys that I have. And he is. Yeah, he was able to retool a lot of his roster with the portal, but I'm going to work with the guys that I have. And he even said he may have to tweak his style to fit the roster.
Yeah.
That's what coaches have to do, especially in this day and age. As he's here for longer periods of time, he'll be able to fully build the roster way he wants it. But right now it's kind of a little bit here, a little bit here, a little here, and you're just kind of piecing it together, trying to hold it together with duct tape and chewing gum. MacGyver would be pleased, and it's all about trying to find success where you can, because at the end of the day, all these players want to do is win. I mean, if you don't want to win, you're doing the wrong thing.
What are you doing?
Why are you here? Why are you anywhere if you don't want to win? Yeah. So he's feeding into the player's natural desire to want to win. He's not stepping on them saying you guys are stopgap, because he got a lot of 1-year rentals and they know they're 1-year rentals. There's no reason to say that out loud. It's just, that's the situation. It's grad transfers or whatever. They have 1 year of eligibility. They're going to make the best of it. They want to end at a high note, and he's going to use that. Cultivate that. Use it to your advantage. I mean, that's what coaches are supposed to do.
Yeah. I think that it is the right message at the right time by the guy, that's Scott Frost. But look, we're going to get to the break here, and after the break, we're going to talk a little bit about fall camp, get to some more comments from Scott Frost. But we'll talk about that and more next on Locked On UCF. This episode of Locked On UCF is brought to you by our friends at 5 Hour Energy. Time to fuel up and turn it up with 5 Hour Energy Transfusion. It brings the bold grape, ginger, and lime flavor of your favorite golf drink, minus the alcohol, into a quick, energizing shot. So whether you're sinking birdies or just making memories with friends on the golf course, this is a hole-in-one for your energy game. Golf is all about good times with good people and good flavors, of course. The grape, the ginger, the lime, grape is my favorite, gives you the best parts of your clubhouse to go without chasing down the beverage cart. If you go to 5hourenergy.com, that is the number 5hourenergy.com. You can use our promo code LOCKEDONGolf to receive 20% off your order. This offer is only valid until September the 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders, so whether you're meeting up with friends or trying to turn 18 holes into 36, get the energizing boost you need to power through. Order transfusion flavor 5-hour energy shots today. Five-hour energy, man. Sometimes I feel like I need this to get through fall camp.
Yeah, give me a line one. I could definitely use one.
Andrew, getting kind of moving forward to fall camp. Scott Frost on that same Jim Rome interview, he talked about everybody is interested in QB. So I want to talk about what he had to say. He said, there's a saying in football, if you have more than one quarterback, you don't have any. And I think that there's some truth to that. I don't feel like that's where we are, Frost said. We got three guys that I think if they were the guy that they give us a great opportunity to compete and win games. He went on to say, but I don't want to hand the job to anyone. I want them to go out and earn it. And so we're being really fair, and we'll take as much time as we need to make sure that we anoint the right person and give him the first opportunity. Scott Frost on his talk. I spoke with my good friend James Duncan on an episode this weekend about Jakuri Brown and how athletic he is and what he brings to the table. It seems like Cam Fancher is bringing a lot of experience that's giving him a little bit of an edge here in fall camp. What do you make of these comments by Scott Frost? He continues to tell people, I don't think he's asking for patience, but he's trying to project confidence in all three guys. But you and I know somebody's ahead of the pack right now, at least in his mind. He wants the competition to compete. It seems like even if somebody's ahead, nobody has really separated enough that they feel comfortable naming a starter at this point. He even left open the possibility that this competition could go into game one, which makes me a little nervous, but hey, that's a game that you can figure some things out in. What are your thoughts here, man, on this QB race and Scott Frost's comments on where his QBs are at?
Well, he said on more than one occasion using that whole multiple quarterback quote. If the dual quarterback system, if you have two, you have none. And sorry, I'm of the subscription of that. There are very few exceptions to that. University of Florida back in the Chris Leak, Tim Tebow days. I'm going to put on my scarlet and gray goggles, and Stanley Jackson and Joe Germain in the 1990 the 90s at Ohio State. That worked, but most two quarterback systems don't work all that well. It's usually because something's very deficient, and you have three quarterbacks that all have very different skill sets. Fancher is more of a dual threat. Brown is a runner. Jackson is more of a pocket guy. So you have a bit of everything there. And while he keeps repeating the point, that he doesn't really subscribe fully in this case to the whole multiple quarterback thing, I think it's twofold. One is because each guy there are three different dynamics here. And the other is I think he's trying to keep it close to the vest, because we talked about this before, where he can utilize the situation to his advantage. There was no standout in spring ball. There's still no standout. Practice is only open, 20 minutes at most to the media, so that you can really get, drill things down when they're gone, and you can show who's maybe has a little bit of favor, ahead of that competition versus who's not. Hard to say, since we're not allowed there at that point.
Right.
But the fact that he keeps going, he said at a press conference, he said it, on national syndicated radio. He keeps saying the same point over and over again. I'm not sure if he's trying to sell it to himself or sell it to everybody else. It's that whole marketing, the whole thing. If you tell yourself something over again, you will eventually buy into it. So maybe he's trying to convince the world at large that the fact that UCF has three quarterbacks still competing, no starter, no nothing, is a good thing versus a bad thing. Maybe that's what he's trying to sell here.
Yeah. Look, Scott Frost has a little bit of experience, not a ton of P4 experience. Now you've got Taven Jackson in there. That was a guy that a lot of us thought would, take the lead here, but that doesn't appear to be the case. Jakuri Brown has not gone away, and Cam Fancher seems like he could be leading the QB race there. So it's going to be interesting to see which guy comes out on top, because it's going to be hard to decide what I would call the personality of your football team until you name your starting quarterback. Some of those guys do some very different things, and Scott Frost has got to figure out, hey, which one of these guys is going to be my guy? Because after you name a starter, Andrew, it's not something you want to change very quick. Name a starter for game 1, and then by game 3, you're switching quarterbacks. You want to know who you are on offense when you play North Carolina. And it worries me. The whole idea of going in, still trying to figure out game 1 kind of worries me just a little bit. But he knows what he's doing, I think. And I think he understands how to get the most out of these guys in competition now before camp starts. I just want to see. I want to see the cohesiveness that he's talking about. He's talking about getting guys to know each other and trying to build culture. The starting quarterback it's so important, because UCF could not push the football through the air last year. And whoever he picks as a starting quarterback, I think they're going to need to do that to some extent because of the talent gap between UCF and the rest of the league. I think what you're going to see this year is you're going to find them in some tough fourth quarter battles. And can UCF get over the hump in a couple of those games at the end, push the ball down the field, get the score to seal the game, or get the score to come back? They couldn't do that at all last year, and that's how you end up a 4-win football team.
Right, and the fact that UCF may go in with one quarterback and have to change to another pretty quick. I mean, it isn't unprecedented. It happened in 2014 when Pete DeNova lasted one half, and he was so bad they yanked him. Looked good in practice, couldn't translate the games. 2019, Brandon Wimbush was the guy. As expected, couldn't hit the side of a barn. Enter Dylan Gabriel. It's not unprecedented, but usually it's because the product, they, at least in those cases, they named a starter, and then the product was just so putrid that they had to, look at something else. It's bad. These were guys who just weren't panning out, and they had to be replaced. I mean, when you look at it statistically, KJ Jefferson was not the worst quarterback on UCF squad. I mean, you could make an argument that from a consistent standpoint, he was obviously better than Colson or Brown. And if you take away Risk's first game, was Risk better than KJ Jefferson? But by then, they had already said you're done. He was just seemed sluggish, out of shape. I mean, he just never looked right. But from a stat standpoint, he still looked better than most of these other guys. So I mean, how you determine who the best guy is may not be by pure numbers, but it could also be how the team responds around you. Are you leading properly? Can you generate wins? There's a lot of pieces other than just do I have more yards than the next guy?
I agree. Look, QB isn't the only competition going on. There is a competition going on in the backfield and running back as well. We're going to talk about that competition next on Locked On UCF. This episode of Locked On UCF is brought to you by our friends at Monarch Money. Monarch Money makes managing your finances even easier in a time where finances may be tight. Ever wish managing your money felt easier? I know I do. With Monarch Money, it can be. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase like a house, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth, which should always be the goal with your finances. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. Get in the game with Monarch Money. Andrew,
Yes.
Myles Montgomery is not conceding anything to Jaden Nixon. We heard reports all through the summer that Jaden Nixon was absolutely tearing it up. Myles Montgomery has repeatedly been the first running back mentioned when talking about the run game by Scott Frost. I cannot overlook. I don't think that's nothing. And he talked about Myles Montgomery being next up and making sure he gets his shot. These are I'm paraphrasing, but these are things that Scott Frost has alluded to in recent press conferences and interviews, and saying, "Hey, man, RJ had big shoes to fill, but we feel like Myles Montgomery can be an every down back. We think he's up to the task." I love this energy. I think this is a great problem to have if you're UCF, because you and I both know in today's college football, you need a two-back system. You need a change of pace back. You need a back that can catch passes out of the backfield. You need a back that can change it up a little bit and throw a little something different at the defense and take maybe 8 to 13 carries additional a game over what you're giving your starter. I want to ask you two questions about this. First of all, your assessment on Myles Montgomery and the opportunity for him this year. And Andrew, what do you think in terms of carries for the running backs, RB1 and RB2? I think that what we'll see is RB1, 20 to 23 carries a game, RB2, 8 to 12 carries a game, possibly. Either way, it adds up to over 30 carries a game for the running backs. This is excluding the quarterback. And I think you see on the run game heavy in year one if whoever is behind center it struggles a little bit passing the ball.
Well, there's a few ways we can look at it. We can talk about, if quarterback is an issue, and it potentially could be. We don't know for sure what we're going to see, from that position. I think running back is a much safer situation. You have 4 very talented guys. I don't think it's going to be as lopsided from a carry standpoint. I think it's going to be a little more even, and that's just there because of the nature of the offense. They're going to go tempo when things need tempo, but as a result, you're going to have rotations. When like an incomplete pass or an out of bounds, you're going to take advantage of those rotational times because players tire out. I mean, it's just the nature of the beast. It happens. So I think the carries are going to be a little more balanced. I don't think it's going to be, like 23 to 12. I think it's going to be more like, 18, 13, 18, 15, something a little more balanced. And whoever starts the game, is not necessarily going to be the leading ball carrier.
Okay.
I expect Myles Montgomery to be a team captain. He certainly deserves it. But even if he starts the game, that doesn't mean he's going to be the lead back. And I think it's going to be more situational because you have 2 talented backs with Montgomery, you have Jay Nixon. So I think part of it's going to be situational. What do I need when I need it? But I'm still leaning towards Jay Nixon being the guy who ends up with more by the end of the year. It's just I think he's a little more, he's got a little more time handling the lead role, and I think that'll help out. I do want to point out that the Doak Walker Award just came out with their watch list, and both guys are on the watch list.
Okay.
Yeah, both Montgomery and Nixon are on the Doak Walker watch list, which is for the nation's best running back. And even though Nixon was on Phil Steele's second team All Big 12 versus Montgomery not being anywhere, you're looking based on prior year stuff, but the watch lists, they're paying attention. Nixon's on the Maxwell, that for a top offensive player. So there are expectations out there that Nixon will be the guy. But you're right. You can't write off a guy like a Myles Montgomery who has, a lot of heart. He could have left and he chose not to. Was an excellent ad from Cincinnati when he transferred, and should be a team captain this year. So you have high expectations on what he brings off the field, in the locker room, and that does need to be rewarded with playing time as well, especially when you're kind of very 1A, 1B kind of 2 range with Jaden Nixon.
Yeah. Look, you got to have more than one guy that can do the job. Obviously, I would even go as far to say that RB3 has become important as well. All it takes is one injury. And suddenly RB3 is a really important position there in your backfield. If you're Scott Frost, you've got to have a plan for multiple guys to touch the football and to keep those guys fresh going into the fourth quarter, where in my opinion, this year, you're going to see similar in some ways to last year. In the tougher games, UCF is going to have to find a way to win in the fourth quarter. And it's going to be that extra yard. It's going to be that little bit of extra effort. It's going to be that extra pass, that catch that's made that pushes them over the edge. Or what you're going to see is that, maybe they're explosive in year one, and controlling the clock with the run game, controlling the pace of the game at the end of the game to keep the other offense off the field is going to be super important. That's where Myles Montgomery comes in. Or, if you've got a running quarterback, that adds a dimension as well too. If you have a dynamic running back and everybody is a threat to carry the ball, it is when it's 11 on 11 advantage offense, right?
Always.
Yeah, if it's 11 on 11 advantage offense, and that's what having a mobile quarterback to pair with an RB1 will do for you. So like I said, I can't wait to see where this goes. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch. Either way, we're going to be here to cover it. Andrew, I want to thank you for joining me on today's show. As always, guys, please don't forget, hit the comments after the video. Drop your questions for myself and Andrew Gluchov, and we will answer them on our Friday segment. Can't wait to see what you guys want to talk about. That's it for another great edition of Locked On UCF. We also want to thank our friend Steven Leonard for his contributions to the show. We'll be covering his work quite a bit here. Love the work that he does there. You can follow his work at stevenleonard27.substack.com. That's Steven spelled STEPHENLEONARD27.substack.com. Please follow those who follow us. You can also follow him at Twitter at SLeonard27. He keeps it simple there for you guys across all the socials. But big shout out to Steven for his great coverage of UCF sports over the years. I look forward to covering more of his work this season. Look, thank you so much for making us your first listen of every day. For your next listen, go check out the Portal Show. Our guy Brian Smith has the latest in signing rumors, all the things going on in college football. He has got it covered, especially when it comes to the portal. You can find the Portal Show on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. You can find us here tomorrow on Locked On UCF.